Okay, Job chapter 19. Want to start where we left off last week in verse 19. And the second sentence there is, as Job makes this statement, and he says, "My kidneys have failed within me." The kidneys in the scriptures represent organs, our gut, viscera, that represented our emotions. And the word failed here means ended, came to an end. And so he's saying that I'm out of emotions. What I'm speaking here is coming from God. And we had seen that, how he had received that revelation, special revelation from God. And he said, write this in a book. We're going to want this to study this later on. And so he says, my feelings, my emotions are not at work here. This is coming from God, and this is what I want to speak to you. He says in verse 28, if you say, why do we persecute him? Or what are we doing? We're persecuting him. We're challenging him. What is this all about? If you're asking the question why, Job, seeing the root of the matter has been found in me. So God had given Job the foundation of what it was being said, had gifted him with that revelation. Then he goes in verse 29, he says, fear the sword yourselves. So you're wanting to attack, but be careful. Fear the sword. Fear the judgment yourself. For wrath, anger, the word brings is in italics here, but the idea brings the punishment or the evil of the sword. The anger brings the evil of the sword, so that you know there is a judgment. And so be careful, be aware. And so he's saying, don't be judging other people without first judging yourself. Judge not, Messiah said, judge not that you be not judged. And so we need to look at ourselves, and we need to take care of ourselves instead of being, judging other people. And so Job ended his speech with these words. And so then we go on to Zophar speaks, and again about the suffering that the evil people will face in their lives. And so we start in Job chapter 20, verse 1. Then Zophar the Naamathite, and Naamath was a southern part of Judea, and Zophar responded and said, truly, verily, my thoughts cause me to respond, to have an answer, even because of my haste, my hurry within me. So this was a little bit out of the ordinary. We talked about that before, how that in the Orient, we would speak our thought. Everybody would listen quietly, and we would say what was on our mind. And then we would finish. And then somebody else would speak their thought. But it's almost like the words were coming to Zophar so powerfully that he had to get in there, and he had to say these things. And so he says, because it is hurrying within me, I need to speak these words. So what we can see here is that there was a group of people around Job, and they were assembled. They're just kind of, together in a group sharing. And Zophar jumps in there. And then he says, in verse 3, he says, I have listened, I have heard to the reproof which insults me. My question here is, why would it insult you? If truth is being given, if truth is being shared, why would it insult you? The idea of insulting would be to put me down. It's putting me down. Why would it put you down? If you're doing what's right, why would it put you down? And so it's amazing that he would be admitting to this. And yet he's making this statement. And this is a reaction for us to be sensitive to, because if somebody is speaking truth, and we know it's truth, it's coming from the scriptures, and yet it seems like it's putting us down or insulting us or talking about, maybe it's insinuating a lifestyle that we're following that may not be the best lifestyle. So if we feel that, number one, don't tell anybody. You don't have to be, you can just let that go and let that sink in. Why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling insulted? Why am I feeling put down? Why am I feeling like I'm being degraded? When all that's being done is the speaking of the truth. So it's speaking to your conscience. Spirit is speaking to your conscience, not to degrade you, not to destroy you, not to make you appear to be less of a person, but that's what our spirit does. Our spirit convicts us. Our spirit is where we see the truth. So our spirit shows us the truth. So listen to that, all right? Somebody says something and you feel like it's putting you down, just contemplate that. Don't come against them. Don't try to defend yourself or come up with some reason why you do what you do. Just kind of listen to your spirit. Be sensitive, be moldable. And so here we see that so far, he says, I hear the reproof. It's affecting my spirit. It's making me wonder, okay? And the spirit, the ruach of my understanding, the spirit of my understanding makes me answer, makes me respond to what you have said. So it's kind of like so far is giving to us his reason for speaking and the value of the word that he has to share with us, and the fact that he assumes the right to the platform, to the soapbox that he's going to be sharing with us. Okay, so now we tune in. We turn our ears toward what's being said. In verse 4, he says, you have known this of old, since man was placed on the earth. So these are words that are common knowledge. It doesn't take, of course, so far I wouldn't have said this, but it doesn't take rocket science. It doesn't take a lot of intellect to see that this is right. Okay? These are things that have come to us through our generations ever since man was placed. And I like that wording here. That's exactly in the Hebrew what he's saying. So he's recognizing a creator. He's recognizing the fact that there was a point in time when there was no man on the earth, and then there was a point in time when God placed man on the earth. And since that time, so since Adam, these are things that we should know. And then he goes on, he says that the singing or the triumphing of the wrong, the immoral, is short-lived. Now, the word here for immoral or wrong is an adjective. And so there's a noun that's supplied. There would be a noun supplied. So the wrong ones or the wrong matters or whatever the context, probably as we think about the rest of the chapter, maybe it's talking about the wrong ones. But we could play with this a little bit, because we could say teachings, the wrong teaching, the immoral teachings, or the immoral examples. The word for wrong here, avon, is in the plural. So it's not just the wrong one or just wrong, but there's a plurality there. And so, again, we could broaden our thinking as we need application. We could expand what's being said here to where it could probably speak to all of us. If I was going to say, this is what's going to happen to the immoral person, and most of us here would say, well, that's not me. I'm not an immoral person. But if we think this is what happens, this is the characteristic, this is what happens to the immoral actions or the immoral teachings or whatever, then we could probably somewhere along the line realize there was a time, or there was an event, or there were things that I've done in the past that were not in line with the teachings of God and with the law of God, the Torah, and so forth. So it opens the door. See what I'm saying? So instead of saying that this is all for all the bad people that are in prison, it's not for us here who are in a church. We can kind of say, well, maybe there is. Okay, maybe there is something here in this chapter that we can receive that might insult us, but we can learn from it and we can be better people because of it. So it's not to put us down, it's to show us and motivate us to do what's right. It's always right to do right. It's never right to do wrong. The joy, and that the joy of the defiled one, and the perverted one, in the King James, this word is always translated hypocrite, which is an interesting word itself, hypocrite. But as we think of a defiled one, as we think of a soiled one, something soiled, something defiled, it's like most of us could take a glass of water from the tap, even though it's not purified, even though it doesn't come out of a plastic bottle. You know, there was a time when we actually drank water that didn't come out of a plastic bottle. Isn't that amazing? Do you remember those days? Okay, so let's say that we took a glass of water out of the tap, and I don't have any problem drinking this. I mean, it comes right out of the tap. But let's say that we took an eyedropper and extracted some water out of the toilet and put a drop of that water. Now, parts per million, it's not going to be that much, parts per million. But I wonder how many people seeing us do that would actually say, oh, that's not bad. Drink it. I don't, that's kind of disgusting, isn't it, to even think about that? But, when we think about our lives, we think, well, I'm pretty good. Most people think that I'm pretty good. Notice one thing about a hypocrite is that hypocrites really look good because they're trying their best to look good. And they're trying their best to fool everybody. But they know what's in their heart, but they know how to play the game. And that's what a hypocrite is. Somebody with a mask on. Okay? And so a lot of times, how many of you have heard of situations where somebody that, man, this person had incredible character. I mean, this person did all these things right. They had these positions in the church. They were good, upstanding citizens, all this, and then all of a sudden everybody hears that this had been going on for years, and people are shocked that this person was involved in that. Okay, you fill in the blanks. But you can see what I'm saying. In their heart, they were perverted. In their heart, they were twisted, but they could put on airs about them. And so a lot of times, now this doesn't give you license to sin to show that you're not a hypocrite. I'm playing with people's brains here, so I have to be really careful how I adjust them, because sometimes it tweaks the wrong direction. But the fact is that just because you may look white and clean on the outside, Messiah talked about that, didn't he? You're just whited sepulchres. On the inside, there could be some perversion. And so, again, I'm wanting to recognize that in my life. If I'm going to go to God for correction, I need, first of all, to come to a place where I need correction. I need to know that there are some things in my life that I need to do differently and to be the tool that God wants me to be. All right? So he says here, the joy of the defiled one is but for a moment. Rega. Rega means minute. It's but for a moment. So these are temporary. The triumphing of the immoral is short-lived. The joy of the defiled one is but for a minute, for a moment. So these things come and go. Although his pride mounts up to the heavens. Again, while we read this, I want to encourage you. The word his, there's only the masculine and feminine pronouns in Hebrew. They don't have an it. The word his, if it's a masculine pronoun, it can also be it. Okay, so when we read his, Try to expand as you're trying to make application. It could be like we see here. Although its pride or its exuberance, okay, it's lifting up, its pride, arrogance, whatever you want to put there, mounts up, builds up to the heavens. Although his pride mounts up to the heavens, and his head does reach to the clouds. The word "reach" here means to smite. It's a word to lay hands on. We use it. We have lay hands on something, and so even though his rosh, his head hits the clouds. Kind of reminds me of that game where you know at the fair where you had the ball and you had the big sledgehammer, you know, and you whack the whatever it is there that hit the ball, you know, try to get the ball to ring the bell, you know. And so his pride, you know, all that he thinks about, narcissism probably wasn't known in Job's time, but you know, that arrogance, that exaltation of the wrongdoer, he hits the clouds, and so he thinks, you know, he has arrived. Okay, verse 7, he perishes forever. This pretty base statement here, but it says he perishes or he loses. It ends forever. Forever means continually, actually. So he ends, he perishes, he loses continually, forever, like his own dung. Okay, now your mind has been there. Now we'll move on. Those who have seen him say, "Where is he?" So it's like a flash in the pan. What happened to so and so? You know, oh, he was so famous. Where did he go? And so that's the idea of the picture here. So if we're looking for a lifestyle that has longevity, not something that's just a flash in the pan, not something that is temporary, not something that is fragile, but we're looking for something that's solid. We want to do away with anything that's immoral or against God's teachings. Recognize those things, okay? So those who have seen him say, "Where is he?" In verse 8, he flies away like a dream. Have any of you had a dream where, you know, you wake up and, man, I had this dream, and you want to tell somebody about the dream? And you can't remember what it was. You know, whoop, there it is, gone. Well, that's the way. He flies away like a dream. He like the word off here, like the wings. He takes wings and soars away like a dream and is not found. Can't find it. I know exactly what it means when it says is not found. Man, I wish I had $1 for every hour that I have spent looking for something. It's just crazy. I'll pray, God, open my eyes, little things. And I just know I could go down, I could run to town and buy it. It'd be $5 or $10 to buy it. But I know I've got 2 or 3 of them and I can't find them, you know, and I just work it. And finally it's like, boom, the light comes on, you know, and I find, oh, there it is. And so then I could go to it and take care of it. But man, crazy. But he flies away like a dream. You know, we were talking today, just one of the things I like to do when I lived on the ranch was build fence. I love building fence. Number one, I did it all by myself. Nobody else was around me. I enjoyed that. And number two, you could build. It took a little bit to build fence. And if any of you have built barbed wire fence, in the mountains, we built 5-strand barbed wire fence. So you'd stretch one wire, and then you'd go down and you'd stretch another wire. And if you stretch the middle wire, and if you stretch too much, the other wires would loosen up. And so you had to kind of play with it, you know, to get all of them tight, but not too tight, you know, kind of work at it. So it took a little bit. And then of course, throw the staples in the cedar posts, which were harder than the rock. But I enjoyed it, you know, because you get done for the day and you look back and said, you know, there's there's the fence that I built. It's kind of one of those deals. You build a house, you have kind of that same thing, but a house is never built. Do you know that? A house is never built. I mean, yeah, it might pass inspection, but there's always something in there that needs to be done, needs to be upgraded or whatever. But a fence, that'll last until the next snowstorm. But anyway, I enjoyed building fences. But as you think about this, you want to build something that lasts. You don't want a life that where you're here a little bit and gone. You don't want something temporary. You want something that will last. You want to do something that's going to make a difference in your civilization. And you want to shine that light. There's enough evil in the world. We know that. We don't have to focus on that. But we need to shine our light, and we want to do things that will last. And we want to build things that we can give away and other people can enjoy. All of those things. But that's not going to be if we continue to do things that are immoral. And so he says it is driven away like a vision or revelation of the night. Eyes that saw, verse 9, eyes that saw him do so no more, nor does his place see him anymore. The word eyes in verse 9 is actually singular, which means eye. Ein is the Hebrew word. And in Hebrew, we don't have all the articles that we have. We don't have a and an, just the. And so there's not an article here. So it's almost like a name. It's almost like a affirmation. And so I that saw him, I like the eye but one eye, I that saw him does so no more. Now, if you think of one eye, what do you think of? You think of the Almighty. And as I think about his seeing us, if we continue in our immorality, what's being said is that he's watching and he's going to try to corral us back into his way. But there's going to be a time, as we saw in Genesis chapter 6, during the time of Noah, there's going to be a time when his spirit will not always strive with man. There's going to be a time when he will say, enough is enough. Okay, you want to do that? I'm going to let you go. And his eye no longer will be looking at what you're doing. Maybe that's what you want. But what I want is his correction. And what I want is his blessing. What I want is to walk in his path and know at the end of the day that I did my best to follow him. And, we work with people in different situations here at the campground, and we see the opportunities to bless people in their lives. But whatever God tells us to do, that's what we do. And whatever they do is totally up to them to do whatever they do with what we do. Okay. So we make the offer, but they're going to respond. Okay. It's like you sit down with the scriptures and you go through scripture verses that talk about salvation. You can't save anybody. All you can do is offer what God is offering. All you can do is be obedient to God in your life. And at the end of the day, you said, well, I obeyed God. They have their own choice that they can make. And we pray that they will make the choices that God wants them to do. The eye that saw him sees him no more, nor does his place. There's no spot for him anymore. He doesn't have a place anymore. Where's his place? Where's his niche? Where's the slot for him? Where's the pigeonhole that he fits into? Where remember those kids, the puzzles that were different shapes, and the little kids would find the different shapes and put those shapes through, into that ball. You remember that, or were you deprived? Yeah. Okay. But they have different, triangles and squares and different things that the little kids could fit them and learn their shapes. But there was no place for that. It's like a puzzle piece that didn't belong to that puzzle. Doesn't that drive you crazy when you have a puzzle piece that doesn't belong to that puzzle? Is that where you want to be? You want to be where there's no place? Where there's no slot for you? Where there's no identity? You want to be that puzzle piece that doesn't belong? Or do you want to belong? Thank God for his children, for the children of God, for the children of Israel, that people that love the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you know that you have a place there. And what a blessing that is, a community. When we were celebrating Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks this week, and we were celebrating it with millions of other people around the world, celebrating with Jerusalem. And we were looking at some pictures of Jerusalem, and it was like we got homesick. We've already started a fund so I can go back. It's just, it's just one of those places. But your heart is there because you believe your God is the same God. There's just that family, just that family, and just a blessing. There's nothing like that. I don't know other religions. Other religions probably have places like that, but I just look. I'm praying for that open door to go back. It's good to have a place. It's good to fit into a place. And what a blessing. If you're immoral, and I'm saying not, well, you're a bad murderer or something. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that you're allowing your soul to choose to do things that are against the holiness of God. Okay, that's basically what I'm saying. Those are the challenges that we face. And that if you are walking or have a desire to walk with God, that there's a place for you. There's home for you. There's a place where there are people that will love on you, and you'll be able to share with them, and it's exciting about that. And it's all good. If you could, you could stand at the front of the room and say, "Hello, my name is John, and I'm a believer." Instead of saying, "Hello, my name is Sam, and I'm a rattlesnake." There's a difference. What a blessing it is to be part of God's family. He offers that to us. So his sons seek the favor or the benefit of the poor. In other words, they oppress the poor. They're wanting to gain something from the poor. Here's somebody who is struggling. Here's somebody who's trying to survive in this life, maybe support a family. And there are other people who want to get, if they have anything, they want to get it. Oppressing the poor is a big, big no-no in the scriptures. If you want to see the wrath of God come down, oppress the poor. We need to be careful about that. But sometimes we see people that are going through hard times, and instead of saying, what can I do to help that person? What can I give that person that will be an encouragement? We think, what can I get from this person? Oh, this person is having to give up her mother's china that she's wanted to keep all her life, but she's having to sell it because they're on hard times. And you say, oh, good. I hope I can get it for half the price. Instead of saying that, say, what's the full price? And just give the price to them. Let her keep her china. What a difference that would be. What a difference that would make in our world, right? And so we need to keep from looking at these opportunities, take from the poor. Now, there are plenty of other people that we can barter with, that we can buy things from without oppressing them. We can actually be a benefit to other people in our purchases. The word favor here is that same word that Job used in the last chapter when he talked about benevolence, or actually like stooping down, to give a child a piece of or sucker, a piece of candy, or even from the other side of it to ask for a gift or for help. something like that. And so it's like the sons were going to the poor people to ask for help, oppressing the poor. His hands give back his wealth. Now you'd think that, being the very godly people that we are, being the very righteous people that we are, that a lot of the words that are given to us in the book of Job talk about money. Why is money such a big deal? Why is, I thought we should just live without any money. Would you like to do that? Just live a life without money. Well, who needs money, right? But the fact is, the idea of having money or a means of exchange is very important. We understand that we can't go to this tire store and buy a tire for our car with a trunk of eggs. You might be able to sit outside the tire store and sell your eggs and then go buy the tire. That might work. But it's good to have money. Money is a good thing. But what he's talking about is that when we don't understand the value of money, not worshiping money, not seeking after riches, not letting money be our God and controlling us, the power of money, the power of possessions, doesn't have to be green, but anything. But as we look at God giving to us the ability to take care of ourselves, if we don't recognize the value of it, if we can oppress the poor to get gain, we're going to become poor ourselves. Our hands are, the money's going to come in and go out, and we're going to say, what in the world happened? His bones shall be filled with his youth. The idea is vigor, vim, vigor, and vitality. His bones will be filled with youth. He'll have all this energy. But it lies down with him. Oh, sorry about that. Some things just crack me up. It's just my kidneys are working. His bones are filled with his youth, but his bones lie down with him. You don't. Okay, when you get it, you'll laugh. His bones lie down with him in the dust. He has all this vitality, all this energy, all this capability of accomplishing, of producing, and yet he lies down in the dirt. Proverbs talked about that. You set a plate full of food in front of them, but they're too lazy to lift up their fork to eat. Of course, if I had the vim, vigor, and vitality of a youth, I'd break something anyway, so we have to be careful. But verse 12, and evil, or though evil, if evil, that word is there. If the evil, though evil is sweet in his mouth. Okay, so next few verses, we're going to look at this word picture of somebody eating. After we talk about food, you'll probably not hear anything else that I say. But here is a person, okay, the word picture is somebody eating evil. Okay, taking a bite out of evil. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, he hides it under his tongue. What I picture is two things. First of all, going to the doctor and they take the 2x4, stick it in your mouth and say ah, the depressor. I think it's called depressor. Say ah. Well, it's kind of like that. They're looking in your mouth for something. Last night's dessert, I don't know what it is, but they're looking for something. And you can't see what's under your tongue. It's hidden. But there's something else that I think, because we could also put a piece of candy and put it under our tongue And it'll last and last and last. Sometimes I've gone to bed and gone to sleep with a cough drop in my mouth and my cheek, and I'll wake up like a couple hours later and it'll still be there. Thankfully, I haven't sucked it into the wrong spot yet, but I said, this probably isn't too good, but it lasts for a while. So here's someone that hides it almost like a treasure. And we'll see that later on too, that things that are hidden are usually thought of as a treasure. I don't want anybody else to find it. And so evil is sweet in his mouth. He hides it under his tongue. He fondles it. He swashes it around, up and down, upon, with, and does not let it go, does not forsake it, but still keeps it in his mouth. Okay, you have that image, don't you? His food is turned in his stomach. So it's sweet in his mouth. Got a lot of joy from it. You had a way where you could make it last. It seemed like it was something of quality. But when the food, anything that we eat, his food is turned in his stomach. It didn't set well in your stomach. The bitterness, the poison of cobras is in him. That's pretty strong. The cobra is a very poisonous snake, of course, as you know that. Now that they're yellow and black stripes, yellow. The cobra, I was trying to think if I could remember what a cobra looked like, but in the Middle East, cobras are seen and very poisonous. Bitten by a cobra, you might live for maybe 10, 15 minutes. You want to get the poison out because it's as the poison gets into the blood that will inevitably kill you. So if there's a way, if you're bitten in a way where you can put a tourniquet, where you can open it up, where you can drain the poison out, you might be able to save your life. But he chooses a serpent, he chooses a snake here that's very venomous, the bitterness. So it turns in his stomach, it becomes very bitter, and it is destructive. It kills. So you have allowed that evil to come into you. You've thought about it. You've meditated upon it. You've accepted it into your lifestyle. You've made a way for it to participate in your thoughts and in your actions. You swallow it, it becomes part of you, but your stomach doesn't like it. Your insides are fighting it. Listen to your stomach. It's fighting it because it's wrong. It's not saying, oh, I've got to find a reason. I've got to find an excuse. I've got to find a way to talk myself out of this. I got to be able to go to God and say, God, I know this is wrong. I know everybody thinks it's wrong, but I know that this is a gift that you are giving to me. Now, if there's a big biblical principle that's being violated, then it's wrong. And if we understand what the principle is and we partake of this evil, it's going to gnaw at our stomachs. The poison is there. It's deadly. It's destructive. Verse 15, he has swallowed down. The word swallow we translate destroyed, but this is literally his swallowed down riches, which speaking of the power, wealth, ability, all of those things, when it's talking about riches, then vomits them up again. Okay, you got that word picture? I guess I don't need to explain that. Is there a taste in your mouth that you recognize? El is a shortened form of Eloah or Elohim, God, the mighty one. El drives it out of his stomach. Now you look at that and say, well, this is judgment. No, this is truth. Truth. It's probably not the verse that you memorized in Sunday school, but I'm just letting you in on this. The word drives drives it out. The word drives means to occupy. Like you have a house and other people's things are in that house, but then you move into that house and occupy that house, other people's things are put out. When we first came to Sturgis, there was no place to rent. We found this, became friends with this individual, and he had an apartment to rent on a split level home in town. But the guy was a truck driver and hadn't paid rent for months, but he was gone and he didn't know what to do. And I said, we were looking, we just couldn't find anything else. And so I asked the owner of the house, I said, well, would you mind if we moved in? We would pay the rent. Would you mind if we moved in and we would just take care of his stuff? We would box it up and move it out, put it in the garage, and at least my family and I would have a place to live. And he agreed to that. I don't know if it's legal or not. It didn't matter. He was he was well thought of in the Sturgis community. So I was confident that everything would be all right. I didn't worry about it. But he let us move. So when we moved into the house, the things of the other person moved out. Now let that show you here. He's making this statement. He's come up with that word picture about us eating evil. It's gotten in our stomach. It's made us sick because of our conscience, the Spirit of God working in our lives. Ale moves in. Ale occupies, and everything comes out of our stomach. Let God occupy. Why would you close the door on the Almighty? Let him in. Let him in. Let him fill. Don't reserve that closet for yourself. Open all the doors. Open the cabinets up. Let him into every part of your life, because if he comes in, that evil is going to be extracted. It's going to be given up. And that's what you want. That's what you desire. Let God in, because ale drives it out of his stomach. Then we go back to the snake. In verse 16, it says, he sucks the poison of cobras. I don't know if this is because he has been bitten by the cobras and he's trying to survive. I don't know, but in the last few seconds, you do what you can, I guess. But it could just, I'm guessing that's probably what's taking place here. But it says the tongue of the poisonous snake slays him. So far, probably was not a botanist, but that's okay. We understand. It's not the tongue of the snake that passes the venom into your body. It's the fangs that are tucked up to the top of his mouth, and when he goes to bite to put venom into his prey, the fangs come down and pierce into through the skin. But at any rate, we know what he's saying here. We'll talk to Zophar when we have an opportunity and explain it to him. But the tongue of the poisonous slays him. So he's trying to save his life. But there's nothing. The poison inevitably kills him. The only way that you can take care of sin is God's way. Confess it. Plead the blood of Messiah. Let go of it. Let Spirit of God, Ruach HaKodesh, change your life, give you new motivation, give you new direction. Some things you do right now, some things it takes some time. But it's worth the effort. Verse 17, he looks not on the streams, the rivers flowing with honey and cream. Couple words here, streams and rivers and flowings. It's kind of a progression here. He looks on the gully. He doesn't look at the gully. I mean, he sees the gully, He sees the gully, but he doesn't pay much attention to it. What he's looking for is the river. He wants the river, not the gully. Because it's the river where the honey and the cheese, the word cream here means cheese, the curds. He wants the milk and honey. He's looking for the river. He sees a gully, he's not interested. What he doesn't realize is the gully leads to the stream. He doesn't see the potential. His eyes are blinded. Well, if I do this, how's this going to make me $1 million? You know, you can't see past that moment. You may not have to do this. That seems too menial to me. When you see that God is giving to you an assignment that doesn't seem to be this great earth-shattering occupation, if it's part of God's plan, it may just be a gully, but if you get enough gullies together, it makes a river. I know that's hard for your pride, but you're just a gully. I'm just a gully. But being just a gully, I can connect what's above me with what's below me to that river of life where God wants us to be. The river's flowing with milk and honey. That's what we want. He doesn't see the stream. Verse 18, he is giving back what he labored for. Sounds like April 15th, but it's just kind of that way. Like I said, our thoughts, our thinking, if our minds have been given to the enemy, we're not going to think clearly. We're not going to do things in a rational manner. He's giving back what he's labored for. He does not eat. Like wealth from his trade, from his occupation, he does not enjoy. For he has oppressed. Getting back to that begging from poor people. For he has oppressed, he has forsaken the poor. He has seized the house which he did not build. He thought of a way he could connive, he could scheme, he could wiggle in to this situation and take advantage of someone else and end up with a house that he did not buy, a house that he did not work for. It's amazing to me how many times in Scripture, when we think of sins, okay, we think of sins, murder, stealing, robbery, adultery. We think of smoking and drinking and dancing, and that's what ours. I was raised with. You don't smoke, you don't drink, you don't dance, you don't carouse, whatever carouse means. But there's some things you just don't do as a Christian. You don't play cards. Certain groups of people. It's amazing to me, though, how that there's a lot in the Bible when it talks about taking care of the stranger, taking care of the widow, or taking care of the orphan that doesn't have anyone that doesn't have somebody to take care of them. There's a lot in the Bible about those people, but we're kind of focusing on playing cards. I'm pretty good because I don't do this. First time I went to the movie, I was in high school, and my parents went to a church activity, and I stayed overnight at a friend's house in town, and we sneaked out. We sneaked out. Oh man, I didn't even enjoy the movie, and it was really, it kind of was like an eye opener where I knew I'd get caught, no matter how hard it. The fact is that it had snowed that afternoon, and when my friend came by in his car to pick me up, I walked out to his car. And when he dropped me off, I got out of his car where he stopped, and I walked back. And the people I was living with in town, They came home from the church activity and they said, "Where did you go?" There are tracks in the snow, dimwit. But I had no idea I'd get caught, I mean, that's what it was like in my house going to the movies. It was like I was going to swing, which I can see the pros and cons. I'm not talking about all those on Telegram. I'm not dissing. If any of you have a reason not to go to movies, I'm not taking that away from you. All I'm saying is that it would have been good for me to be taught about some of these other things, like oppressing the poor and oppressing the orphan and the widow and the stranger. There are some things that are more important. And that was mentioned here. Verse 20, it says, "For he shall know ease. He shall not know. He shall not know comfort. He shall not know ease. He shall not know peace in his insides, in his innermost, the word here is belly, his beten, his belly. He shall not know tranquility in his belly. Neither save," word here means to preserve what he desires. Those things that you would treasure are not going to be available. They're going to be taken away. There is no leftover. This is a really good proverb here. There's no leftover after he is eaten. Therefore, his good does not last. I'm going to give you a proverb here that you need to live by. Always leave leftovers. If you always leave leftovers, you're always going to have something to eat. But he says here, there's no survivor. The word here means survivor. But there is no leftover after he has eaten. In other words, he's talking about gluttony. He just ate it all up. Therefore, his good is tov, hatov. His good does not last. So he's relating it to his morality. So he's not just talking about having groceries, but he's talking about the fact that if everything's destroyed, if all the good is destroyed, there's not going to be any good left over. People that are so used to doing things that are wrong are going to have a hard time imagining doing things that are right. With all his plenty, he is in distress. He is in anxiety. He is pressed. With all his plenty, he is stressed out. The hand of every laborer comes against him. Or kayad, it's every hand. Labor worker comes. In other words, every laborer comes on every hand, at every hand, all around you, at every hand. Okay? So what are they coming? They're coming for work, they're coming to get your wealth. Whatever it may be, whatever picture you could see there. It shall be at the filling of his stomach that he casts on him. This is the translators here capitalize the pronoun he. So speaking of God, we don't really know if it's talking about God, but just by context, we can see that this could be a God thing. So it shall be at the filling, at the satisfaction of his stomach, that he, God, casts on him, sends him his burning wrath, his fire, and rains it down on him while he is eating. Still going with that word picture. So he brings down the judgment while he is still enjoying himself. He shall flee from the iron weapon. Iron was, of course, a strong metal used. Two weapons here. A bronze bow pierce him through. Bronze made out of copper, and King James says steel, I think, but I don't know if they knew anything about steel then. But the iron weapon, a bronze bow piercing him through. So he got shot with an arrow. So he had the iron weapon, which was like a club, and the bronze bow, the arrow of brass that came through him. It is drawn and it comes out of his body. And the gleaming point comes out of his liver, out of his gall. So what he sees that it's hit a vital organ. Fear comes upon him. All darkness waits for his treasures, for those things that he put into security. All darkness is a word that we think of evil, all bad things wait for his treasures. A fire not blown or not puffed at like a forge. A fire without air consumes him. It destroys what remains in his tent. The heavens reveal his crookedness. There's nothing done that's not going to be seen. No action. We can't do things. We don't do things in secret. There may be, nobody around us may see what has happened, but God sees what has happened. If we would get the mindset where we are actually living in the sight of God, it would help deter us from doing those things that are evil. The heavens reveal. You can't do things in secret. It'll be shouted from the housetops. Be shouted from the mountains. Evil will inevitably come out sometime. And you can't undo what you've already done, but you can be forgiven. And you can pray that God forgives you, and God will forgive you, and what a blessing that is. See, forgiveness is when God takes and he says, stop that ripple effect. This person did something that is wrong. There's going to be results from that action, but I forgive it, and I'm stopping those results from taking place. The earth rises up against him. The increase of his house departs, flowing, gushing away in the day of his wrath. Again, all of these different word pictures are for us to get into our heads, because when we're tempted, when the enemy tempts us, or we're tempted with our own desires, weaknesses, we need to call up these word pictures and think about, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. Then he ends it by saying, this is the portion, this is the portion from Elohim for a wrong man, for an immoral man. This is what's going to happen. And the heritage, El has decreed or appointed for him. So God sets up the laws. God designed the laws of nature. Included in that law, those laws of nature are his Torah. And if we violate the laws of nature and we violate his Torah, bad things, destructive things are going to happen. And we know that. And he said, you've known this forever. Since God put man on the earth, this has been true. And all we're doing is trying to come up with the armament that we need to fight off the enemy. What a difference it would have been with Adam and Eve if they would have had examples to look back to. Memories, different mindsets, different ways. We don't know what they knew, but we see that they did not use what they needed to use to combat the enemy in their life. And everything previous to how they had lived was totally changed. Everything just, their whole life was turned upside down. And we might be just getting along. We might be getting by with things. But God is watching. God is watching. I remember one time I went to a store. I was just a kid and, like 45 or something like that. No, really, I was still in school. I went to a store and I saw what I wanted, but I didn't have money. And I really wanted it. So I figured out a way I could shoplift. And I took it. It did not bring me any joy. It just rattled my cage. There was so much conviction within me that is like, I got to make this right. I was a little bit chicken, but I wrote a note to the store manager, and I had this that I had stolen, and I took it to him and dropped it on his desk and left real fast. And I don't know, he probably got a pretty good chuckle out of it, but anyway. It's amazing how those temptations come. It would have been so much easier for me, except for the fact that I wouldn't have had this wonderful story to tell you. But it is amazing. And really you think, well, that's, that happens once in a while. The fact is, if you own a campground, okay, if we go to Walmart, if somebody goes to Walmart and buys $20 worth of product at Walmart, but there's one particular item that they didn't pay for. Self-check. I wonder how many products Walmart loses with self-checking. And so you have these products, $20 worth of products, but you kind of, it's kind of slipped. Oh, I put this in the bag. I didn't really mean to. But you know what you did. You shoplift. The real word shoplift means stole, steal, okay? You can't take away from what it is, right? So you stole something. Even though you spent $20 there, you took something that you didn't buy. You took something that you didn't have permission to take. Now we would look at that and say, oh, that's really wrong. That's really wrong. But as an owner of a store or owner of a business or whatever, you might look at that and think, well, that's not so bad. But anything, I was taught as a young person, anything that you borrow without permission is the same as stealing. And so I knew better. I knew better. And yet I did it. And then after it was done, I really regretted it. And I did what I could to clear up my conscience. And I just never done anything like that again. But what he gives to us, and what I'm saying here, taking extra time because Bethany's not here and so forth, but what we're given is ammunition. God has given us ammunition to fight out the enemy, to destroy the temptations, and help us to see that there's so much better life if we just follow his way. And then we're able to help people. We're able to have that clear conscience. We're able to go to him in prayer and know that he's going to answer our prayers. And we're not going to be afraid to look him in the eyes when we pass that portal and move into the next life. And what a blessing that is. So this is nothing new. These are things that have been mentioned for thousands of years, but something that each one of us need to be reminded of.